Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the She's Got GAWL podcast, brought to you by the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. I am Ebony Phillips, your host, and I am not ashamed to say that I have been looking forward to this conversation all day. I really, really have. We are in our Trailblazer series that we are calling She Was the First Conversations with Women Trailblazers. And just to give a little bit of context to the conversation, when we were reaching out, trying to get ideas, trying to figure out exactly what the members wanted, what our audience was interested in, one of the things that kept coming up was we need to hear from people who've been where we're trying to go. Like we have ideas, we have aspirations and the like, but really it helps if you've been talking to somebody or listening to somebody who's been there. And so that's how the Trailblazer series was really, really born. So this lineup is a diverse and very dynamic group of women. And tonight we have the honor and pleasure and privilege of having attorney Gwen Keyes Fleming with us. And like I said, I've been waiting for this conversation all day. So I might actually kind of rush through her bio a little bit. And if I do, y'all, please forgive me. But Gwen is an attorney at DLA Piper US, and she advises a wide variety of business, institutional, and organizational clients on all aspects of environmental policy, government relations, enforcement defense litigation, and special investigations for private and municipal clients. She provides strategic advice on national security issues involving the protection of environmental and energy infrastructure, such as cyber and physical threats, and including compliance planning, incident response, and subsequent enforcement and litigation matters. Gwen spent more than 20 years in the public sector, serving as both an elected and an appointed official at the state and local levels, as well as in various branches of the federal government. She served as principal legal advisor, general counsel, for immigration and customs enforcement in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and as chief of staff to the Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, during the Obama administration. In addition, Gwen served as the EPA Region 4, and that's the Southeastern region, regional administrator, where she was responsible for establishing and implementing environmental policy, including the principles of environmental justice for 8 Southeastern states and 6 federally recognized tribes. Gwen finalized the region's environmental justice policy, previously stagnated for 10 years, instituted regular environmental justice information sessions with state partners and communities, and created a regional environmental justice interagency working group with other federal agencies to strategically and comprehensively address community concerns. Gwen also instituted the Colleges and Underserved Community Partnership Program, CUP, which partnered college students with senior federal staff to provide much needed environmental, health, and technical services to some of the poorest jurisdictions in their region. Notably, Gwen is twice, not once, but twice, is a twice elected district attorney for the Stone Mountain Judicial Circuit in DeKalb County, Georgia, and she was the first African American and also the first woman to hold that office. Gwen is a graduate of Emory University School of Law, and she has a number of accolades, as you can imagine, throughout her career. So I'm only going to highlight a couple. African American Federal Executive Association Ebenezer Bassett Award in 2017, U.S. EPA Environmental Justice Champion of Change Award 2015, Atlanta Metropolitan Combined Federal Campaign Leadership Award, and that was in 2012. Gwen is also a member of the American College of Environmental Lawyers. She is the strategic advisor for government executives and for the Partnership for Public Service, and also a member of the section of Environmental, Energy, and Resources section of the American Bar Association. She's a member, and she actually serves on the board of the Environmental Financial Advisory. She's a board member on the Environmental Law Institute and a board member on the Environmental Protection Network. Please help me welcome Gwen Keyes Fleming. Hey, Gwen.
Hey, Ebony, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. So when I was thinking about our conversation tonight, right, I was just flashing back in my mind because, of course, I have to keep it succinct. But I was like, well, there's so much that she's done and so much that we can talk about. But maybe I should just kind of stick with the script, right? Because I can go a little bit to the left.
Because we could talk for hours. That's true.
Right. And so I came across a quote though. There is a chief technology officer named Marissa Hambleton, and she works at a company that is all things sales and marketing. And in thinking about our conversation, I thought, well, this might be a good point to start on. She says that a trailblazer is a pioneer, somebody who's willing to take risks and go in a path that isn't already there. They blaze a trail and they leave a path for others. And so some of that, if you think about it, yeah, that's kind of what a trailblazer is. That's a common definition. But she says somebody who is willing to take risks. And that's the part that I think maybe we don't think about so much when we see kind of all the things that are accomplished by women such as yourself. And so it got me to thinking though, did you set out to become the first district attorney
No.
Black? And did you, I mean, like, did it happen in the normal course, or were you just sitting around one day and said, let me go pay the fee that you have to pay, a qualifying fee, and put my name on the ballot and just see where this ends up?
So actually, the story of me running for office to begin with, I ran and won the Solicitor General's office. That was the beginning of my political career. And so that came about, even though I ran in 1998, that came about from, really started in 1994 when my boss at the time said that he was running his last race. So he had 4 more years. And after that, he thought DeKalb would be ready for its first Black female Solicitor General, or first African-American Solicitor General. And at that point, I was like, oh no, there's other people more qualified. By that time, 4 years from now, I want to be on the in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm just not interested in politics, don't have any money, etc. And then 4 years later, I looked around at the field of candidates. I was the only one that had worked in the office before, and there was a lot of things I thought my boss did well, and there were a lot of things I thought where we could make it more community friendly.
Right.
And so at that point, it was really born out of a desire to serve, a desire to try something new while still holding on to what I thought was a good foundation. And I do have to say, for most of my positions, I was able to have a pretty solid foundation. There were a few hiccups or a few nicks in the bricks, I guess.
Yeah.
But build on what was already there. And
Right.
so it was not about making history or being a first. It was really about, I want to serve, and I think I can do a good job based on the experiences that I've had.
So you mentioned the Solicitor General's campaign and all the things, which kind of took me back a little bit. So for those who are listening who may not know, so Gwen was my mentor many years ago, and I was her intern and all the things. And let me just say publicly on the record, thank you, Gwen. Because whatever anybody might think of me now, good, bad, or indifferent, I was really rough around the edges. I can own that.
You were not.
And you were
Not.
so patient. You were so patient. But I'm thinking about, since you brought it up, that first campaign, like we were everywhere. We were all over the county, north side, east side, south side. We were at the barbecue. We were everywhere.
Wherever two or more were gathered. That's right.
That's right. But even before that started, in working, so two big things I learned from working with you and being around you, and I'm probably telling the story in the reverse order, because in interning with you, what I really picked up on was your preparedness, right? Like at the courthouse, in the courtroom, there may have been some people who were equally as prepared, but there was never going to be anybody more prepared than Gwen. And before I started working with you, I thought I was a planner. But you turned me into a super planner, actually. And it served me well. But seeing you in a professional environment, that's kind of expected in a way, I guess, of lawyers. But then when we started campaigning, and then I saw you in a non-professional environment at the barbecue, at the cookout, at the softball game, it kind of struck me very early how no matter what group we were with, whatever the demographic was, people just responded to you, right? And you had a way of bringing people together, of making them comfortable, of finding, sort of synergy amongst groups. And I wonder, is that like something you had to work on, or or is that just like a gift? Did you set out to say, I'm going to be the bridge builder? Like, how did that come about?
So it's interesting that you point all those things out. I think, to be honest, one, it comes out of my love for people. I really enjoy being around folks. I enjoy learning about people. So I would, back then, when I was able to remember names, I would make it a point to call people by name, or, you know, you on the campaign trail, you see people over and over again. And so, but the other thing was, I approached it very similar to the way I approached my trial prep in terms of talking to a jury. We always said, be authentic. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. And talk to your jury as if you're the girl next door, or as if you're just sitting down and explaining the case to them, either over coffee or fireside chat sort of thing. And so it's that sort of authenticity that I brought to the campaign. And I recall even saying, you know, I'm just the girl next door. I've lived in DeKalb the entire time that I had been in Georgia. This is what I see. This is what I think I can do. And so I tried to be myself. And I think that's one of the things that I learned as I look back now. Sometimes firsts feel like they have to be somebody else. And I really encourage them to step into their own power and step into that authenticity, because that's what brought you to the position. You know, I firmly believe God had a hand in every position, every race I ever won, every position I ever got. And he didn't put me there to be somebody else. He put me there to be who he called me to be. And so I just carried that through to the best of my ability. And I made mistakes along the way. Let's make sure people know and recognize that. I made some big ones. But you learn from them. You can't let them hold back, that you can't let the negative self-talk stop you from whatever that next rung or next opportunity is. But it really starts with being your true self, because you get exhausted trying to be somebody else. And people sense it when you're not.
Yeah. Well, I was around to watch it, and it was pretty amazing to watch. And I was just a bright-eyed law student who was finally discovering that it was not going to be like LA law. And then I would have to be a real
or Ally McBeal, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm like, really?
Back in the day.
You mean it's not like that? I don't get to sit around and eat bonbons and sip coffee all day and ride around in a convertible? Nope, not gonna be like that. But you mentioned about being your authentic self, and sometimes people have to, or they feel like they have to be somebody else. Was there added pressure though, like of being the first? Like, was there added pressure, added scrutiny, because you were a double first, right? So and if so, how did you handle that?
So I think there was, and I think the source comes from two places. One, I think when you are the first, there are external expectations. I recall there was a sentiment when I was running for DA that women just aren't constituted to make death penalty decisions on cases. So, you know, again, one, this is what, 2004, and people are actually able to form that thought. But then two, there was the internal pressure. Because there was no role model, it was a question of, well, is what I'm doing right? Is this the right way? Is there a wrong way, or is it the wrong way? And so, again, back then, we didn't have a name for it, or maybe we did, and I just wasn't aware of it. But what I was experiencing was imposter syndrome, that I felt like I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve to be in these positions, or that people would find out that I wasn't what I told them I was during the campaign trail. And that's where I'm saying, whether it's external pressures or internal pressures, that internal negative self-talk, you've got to clear the field. You've got to make sure you, one, get still and really identify what you want to do. So I used to spend you talk about planning, I used to spend a lot of time away from people thinking about, what do I want to do with this office? Who do I need to partner with to get whatever project initiative through? And who is the opposition? How can I, just like you would for a trial, what is the defense going to say when we were prosecutors? How do I prepare my case in a way? What witnesses do I need, or what do I need to kind of dismantle whatever opposition or negative theories or defense cases there might be in what I'm trying to do. But in order to step forward in that space, you really do have to get still and identify, well, what is it that I want? What am I trying to do? What would the community benefit from? And so it's a combination of those things. But I remember the AJC did an article, actually, once I became DA, I got pregnant my very first year in office. And they did a story about how my pregnancy was a disservice to the citizens of DeKalb because I was taking a maternity leave.
Gwen,
now
you just made that up. Please tell me you just made that up.
I did not. And that was in 2006.
Wow.
2006.
Wow.
Maybe it's been taken down now, because surely you wouldn't say anything like that. But no female had run the office before. And certainly there was nobody who had been pregnant while in office and looking at maternity leave. And so in that, situation, I probably didn't take as long of a maternity leave as I should have.
Yeah.
But I also knew, and this is something that I always kept with me in every position that I had, I may be the first, but my goal was not to be the last. And so I wanted to make sure that I governed myself in a way that it opened up the door for others. And now, in Georgia, we've got 7 Black female DAs, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely.
But the flip side to that, if I can, and we may be going down a rabbit hole, which is again why this.
Let's go. We could talk all day anyway. So let's go down the rabbit hole.
So because I knew I was the first, there were a lot of things where I moved slowly and deliberately. I didn't make snap judgments. I tried to build consensus as much as possible, because what I saw, how I viewed what we were doing, it was change management.
Right.
In the South, first time a woman's having this position. If I had come in and uprooted things immediately, people would have, started the attacks and, they may have taken. So I always spent a good 90 to 180 days just observing, no change. I would sit, think, and observe and figure out what strategy, or, maybe in the course of time, people came to their own decisions that they were not buying into the vision that I felt I was elected to put forth. And so it was a slow process. A lot of things I would have loved to do on a dime, and I just couldn't. And it came to me maybe 2 years ago, as there was again this transformational movement. Folks in generations younger than me were demanding change. They wanted immediately. And I remember thinking to myself, take it easy. You don't know how the game is played. Yeah. And then I was convicted. I got this sense of, well, maybe the game has changed. Ooh. They don't have to be slow, because the door is open wider now. Yes. So they can move at a faster pace. And I think that's the way you think of change, is on a continuum. Somebody has to be the tip of the spear, and maybe they take more headwinds, but stay the course, because somebody's coming behind you that can do it in a freer way, or with less restrictions, with less opposition. But if you don't make it through the door, they might take longer for them to make it through.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful. But I want to circle back to something you just said. Gwen, you had the imposter syndrome?
I did. Yeah. Let's get real. Because I think that's the other thing. And this is it was just put in context for me really over this past weekend. We always talk about role models. And my friend Stacy Tidwell, she does a fantastic sort of empowerment training seminar. And her thing is, we don't need role models. We need real models. And so very often we look at women who have firsts, and I even, some of the folks that I mentor now, they're looking at me almost 30 years into my career. So they didn't see me the way you saw me. They see what looks like a finished product. And I'm not in any way suggesting that I'm finished.
Sure.
Fine. But to be real, people need to know the struggles that I had. So yes, I had insecurities. I had self-doubts. There were times where I, wouldn't be able to sleep at night, because I'd have to make a decision either about a case or a personnel matter in the office. So there were struggles.
Yeah.
It may look all pretty now, but one of the things that I remember with my best friend and chief of staff, Javon Hicks, I would always, or she would always help me create this safe space where whatever was going on, I would yell, I would scream, I would cry, I would, lament, I would get it all out, all of the emotion that was making me worried or making me upset.
Yeah.
There needed to be an outlet for that.
Yeah.
So that when I stepped into the public realm, either for a press conference or a decision in the office, I was calm.
Yeah.
And could move forward. And so people would only see the calmness. They wouldn't know the, near hysteria that happened behind closed doors.
Right.
But that's all a part of it. And people I want women in particular to understand, you've got to do whatever it is that makes you your best self. And sometimes that means having your moment.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't want to have it publicly.
Right.
But in order to avoid that public display, you've got to take your private time and take a step back, collect yourself, and then you're able to present professionally, confidently, whatever the matter might be about.
Wow. So we don't need role models. We need real models. I love that. I absolutely love that. I might try to, I don't know if she's got that copyright written or something, but I might try to.
We might have to check on that. We are lawyers.
Right. But that would be a great t-shirt. Right. That would be a great t-shirt. But speaking of real models, role models, and the like, who is a woman trailblazer that you admire? Like, who do you look up to?
It's hard to say. There have been so many along the way. Back in the day when I was first running, Kathy Cox, who's now, the dean of Mercer Law School, she was a tremendous role model. She was running statewide at the time. I think about Cynthia McKinney when she was in Congress. She's part of the reason why I was able to garner so much support early on in the county. And then there's others that are out of reach that you read about. One of my favorites is Eleanor Roosevelt, because folks, my dad was a Tuskegee Airman. And when you think about sort of the way she stepped in, it wasn't just what she said, it was what she did.
Yeah.
And flying with the airmen demonstrated her confidence in them, which then became contagious, obviously. And then they went on to make history. So there are lots of people that I look up to that are older than me. I think some of the real trailblazers that I'm starting to have a deeper respect for are the ones that are blazing trails, and they're younger than me. Because just all that self-doubt and stuff that we were just talking about, they may have their moments, but when you're able to do it at that age and you have the level of confidence to go forward, either in the face of opposition or despite it, to me, that's a real gift. And it's one that I struggled with at an early age. And maybe they are too, I don't know.
Yeah.
But to me, to be able to make a difference at a young age is really something that I respect. Because as I've gotten older, I care less about what people think. I think when you're younger, when I turned 50, I was like, you know what? I've been on this planet long enough. Like, I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it took 50 years. And so when I was running in my 30s, I didn't have that sense of self-confidence and things. It developed over time. And that's what I want younger lawyers to realize. It takes a while to get to the position that you see your mentors in. And hopefully they will be candid and share their stories and share some of their mistakes, so that if and when you make them, or I should say when you make them, because we all make them, you're not devastated by them. You become more resilient by realizing even mistakes have a purpose.
Yeah.
Like I teach my kids, I guess the Nelson Mandela quote, I never lose. I either win or learn.
That is one of my all-time favorite quotes.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites. But do you think, though, that the road to becoming the first, do you think it's different for women and men? What do you think about that?
I mean, nobody, nobody says, oh, that's the first man to do X, Y, and Z, even if he is. Usually it's just a position was created or they've been doing it forever.
Right.
They only put the first moniker when it's a woman or when it's a person of color. So it's almost that subtle message of course a man's going to do it.
Right.
You know, that's almost unremarkable. And so I hope we get to the point where, you know, obviously we want to acknowledge first, but it's no longer a surprise.
Yeah.
Like, of course we should have a woman president.
Right. Of course. Why
Of
wouldn't
course.
we? Right. Right. You have had a very illustrious career. Like, I didn't even read everything you've done because I was excited to get to our chat. But you've done a lot. And, you know, I've known you for a long, long time. And I'm just like, wow, she is breaking down barriers. She's opening doors. And one of the things that I appreciate about you is that when you open a door, you don't slam it shut behind you. Not only do you leave it open for the next person to come along, but you hold your hand out and help them through it. And I think that that speaks to really who you are and the example that you're setting for sure. But I wonder, in doing that and in living your life that way, what advice would you have, you know, like for your 25-year-old self? You kind of alluded to some things a couple minutes ago, but let's go like even younger than 30 something. Let's go like 20 something.
Ooh, all right. So I'm 1 year out of law. No, I guess a couple years out of law school. No, 1 year out of law school. I would tell my 25-year-old self, stop being afraid.
Stop being afraid.
Stop being afraid of what people think. Stop being afraid of whether it's going to turn out okay. Stop being afraid of whether you're going to make a misstep. Because honestly, every decision you make, whether it's right or wrong, it's going to help you get to you're going to learn from it, and it's going to help you get to where you need to be. So it doesn't make sense to go through life worried or fearful of doing the wrong thing when you could just do it and accept whatever the universe or whatever God has you to learn from. And so that would be the biggest thing, to stop being afraid.
Stop being afraid. That's like 3 words, but so powerful. Stop being afraid. Wow. But in doing that and sort of coming into your own and finally just saying what you said a moment ago, I turned 50, I'm good. What was the advice that you were given? And I mean, I'm sure you've gotten tons of advice along the way, but some advice that was, you know, just impactful for you that you used to get to the point that you are now, and that you would share with our audience.
Yeah, so it wasn't, the thing that comes to mind wasn't advice, but it was an example. And so when I was regional administrator, I had the opportunity to do what's called a clutch meeting with President Obama. He was coming to the region, and when this happens, they set aside time for him to take one-on-one or family photos with people. And so they call it a clutch. And he was coming to North Carolina as a regional administrator, and it was the time that he had just introduced his Win the Future economic package, I think, or all-encompassing package. And so it got hammered by the Republicans. I think we may recall some Republicans said, well, that's the acronym of WTF, which obviously has another meaning. And so I felt like he was just being pummeled from all sides. It seemed like everywhere he turned or the notion turned, you know, and they pulled down the moniker for this program. It seemed like he was getting attacked on all sides. And so I didn't know what to expect when I went to the clutch. And he came into the room almost like he bounded into the room. He was smiling, high fives, big handshakes, just exuberant.
Wow.
And so the example was it doesn't matter what people say.
Yeah.
I still got a job to do, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to
Yeah.
do it. And
Yeah.
so just seeing that type of resilience
Yeah.
in action, that was the biggest advice. People are going to challenge you. People are going to be upset with what you do. And again, this is why at where we started with preparation is important. When you've done the preparation and you've tried to account for every possible challenge or attack, and if you missed one,
Yeah.
then okay, get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And don't let them get to you, much less don't let them see that they've gotten to you. Just don't let them get to you. Keep going.
Right.
And so again, it's something I will never, never forget.
That's pretty incredible, because that was a very, very interesting time. And for him to respond in that way, that's leadership. That is true. That is true leadership.
And that's what it did for me as a member of the administration. Like, rather than me holding my head low or questioning or not certain how to respond, he set the example. We're still doing this. We're on point. We're doing the right thing. And if they don't get on board, then we'll just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking about things that don't go as planned, what has been the most challenging part for you of becoming the first, or like what I like to call the double first?
I think sometimes there is a sense you get caught up in arrogance. And so I had a particular situation when I was in the region. I thought I was given the charge to deliver on this particular project. It was mountaintop mining in Kentucky. And so I am trying to negotiate this deal. And I needed to go to headquarters to my boss to get it approved. And I got smacked down. Like, I couldn't get to her. I tried to do an end run around folks, still made it very clear I was in the wrong. And so it was a blow. It was a blow to the ego, and so after, went to the bathroom, had my private time, poured out my tears, came back, and I had to eat crow with the folks that I was working with in the state. And I had to step back and say, well, where was the misstep? Did I misread a cue? Did I get too far over my skis? And how do I not have that happen in the future?
Right.
And so I think sometimes that happens for any of us. Maybe that's not just something for the first, but I thought I could deliver on this, and folks would see me as the big negotiator that landed this, long-standing challenge. And it happened was I lost the fact that it wasn't about me. Never about me.
Oh, that's deep, Gwen.
And so whether you're in public service or not, it is not about you as a leader. It is about what you can get your team to do. And hopefully that is to make a difference for somebody else. It's not to give you the accolades or the titles or the access or the money or the fame or anything else. That's too myopic for any position or leader. It is really about, how can you make this world better? And so in that moment, I lost focus. Lost the purpose that I was supposed to be focused on.
So that's a good point of advice, that it's not about the individual, it's about the team and the purpose. But we have some members of our audience who may be listening to this conversation, and they may say, man, that Gwen Keyes Fleming is a rock star. How can I even try to climb that mountain that she's climbed, or a mountain like it? Doesn't have to be, because everybody's journey is their own journey, right? Generally speaking, if there's somebody listening who either has their eyes set on a goal of being the first at something, or maybe not, maybe they just want to ascend from where they are, what would you suggest?
So the mantra that I came up with during my campaign was, just do it. Be courageous, just do it. And I say that, and it's easy to say, But I hope people know and understand that we all go through that risk calculation. Can I afford to do this? Can I take that pay cut? And remember, when I ran for both offices, the bosses that I had, I basically had no job. They wouldn't let me run and keep my job, so I had to resign. If you feel as though you were put on this earth to do something, and this is a quote or a modification of a quote by Benjamin E. Mays, we were all put on this earth to do something extraordinary.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it, it will never get done, which means if you have an idea or inkling or inclination or feel called to do something, write a book, run for office, apply for a position, run a marathon, whatever it is, do it.
Yeah.
And the old Nike commercial, just do it. Because the other thing that I tell people when I do some of my speeches is, may not look like it now, but I was a cheerleader since the time I was 10 until I graduated college. So
I can totally see that. I can totally see that.
Well, when you look at cheerleaders now, I think it's a far stretch. It's a far stretch. It was not one that they were throwing in the air. But we would build human pyramids. And so imagine, you've got two young ladies standing next to each other. Someone comes up, they've got one foot on my shoulder, one foot on the shoulder of the young lady next to me, and you build up. Well, if I'm not standing in the right place, the pyramid falls. And so if you don't do the thing that you were called to do, you are not going to be in your right place. Now, maybe the universe will have somebody else step in, but then you've missed your opportunity to give your unique spin, gifts, contribution to whatever that thing is. So that's why I say, if there is something sparking you or driving you to do something, make it, an informed risk, calculated risk. I'm not saying be completely crazy, but take the risk and just do it. Get as much support as you can. Like I said, I'm thrilled that you remember back to those campaign
Oh my gosh, that was a great time.
Nothing.
We ate a lot of hot dogs and
nothing. And that's probably, we should have started there. The reason I was out engaging everybody is because we didn't have the money for flyers and all the fancy things that you normally see in campaigns. It was truly a grassroots.
It was.
But just do it. And it means that you were called to do it, and somebody needs to stand on your shoulders later. So don't deny them what they need. Again, it's not about you. It's what you can do and be for somebody else to stand on your shoulders. And I stand on the shoulders of so many folks. I always, when he was alive, I would always thank Congressman John Lewis. Because again, but for that sacrifice, there's no way I would have been elected in Georgia. There's no way.
Yeah.
And you think back, Fannie Lou Hamer and so many others that sacrifice for us to be able to have the right, African Americans to have the right to vote, or for women to have the right to vote. All of them were in their right place for us to get to the point of having our first Black president, who then appointed the first Black EPA administrator, who then, despite not ever doing any environmental work, decided to hire the first African-American regional administrator for Region 4. So all of that is a chain that wouldn't have happened without the sacrifice of the folks that came before us.
That's really, really important. I'm so glad you pointed that out. And I was going to close with the question of something for you to share that people might not know about. I might have sort of jumped the gun a little bit, because now we know that you were a cheerleader.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to share with the group.
I am a person who loves quotes. And so I feel like I came across so there's a writer and a poet from New Delhi, India, right? His name is Avijit Das, and I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but it's Avijeet, and then the last name is D like David, AS. And what he has said is, she is a warrior, capable of slaying the demons in life. She is a pioneer, capable of choosing her own path. She is a trailblazer, capable of achieving new horizons. Just give her some time and see her bedazzle the world. And I think that's the perfect place to end. Ladies and gentlemen, this is attorney Gwen Keyes Fleming. This is your Georgia Association for Women Lawyers podcast. She's got GAWL. We are in our Trailblazer series. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I've learned so much. And if you have questions about the organization, or maybe you want to join, maybe you want to renew your membership, we make it really, really easy. Just go to GAWL.org, and we're spelling that GAWL.org. On that homepage, there's a button that says join or renew. That's all you have to do. Thank you so much for coming by, Gwen. This has been an absolute pleasure. I love talking to you. We could go down 10,000 rabbit holes, but we're going to let folks go and get off the air because I do appreciate everybody's time. And until next time, be courageous. Just do it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great, Ebony.